Hi everybody, Brittany here. I have this week's review. The book that we're talking about this week is Trust by Hernon Diaz. I did not know much about this book when I picked it up. It was something that I stumbled upon, I think, on Instagram, and one of the blurbs that I heard about it was that it is Barack Obama's favorite book. It also has a Pulitzer Prize, so it has to be at least pretty good, right? One of the things with this book, and this might be a unique situation for me, I don't like reading the book jacket or the description of books before I read them. I just don't like it. I find it distracting. I'll get hung up on little details that are given in the description and then just sort of focus on them and not be able to focus on the story that's actually being told. Or there will be something that seems really important in the book description and then it never really happens in the book itself, and I find it frustrating. So I never, or at least rarely, read the book description or the little book jacket blurb that you find in the beginning. Because I did not do that for this book, I found it extremely confusing. So here's the setup of the book. It's got 4 different sections. The first section is a book called Bonds, and it's written by Harold Vanner. And that book, or that story, is written very much like The Beautiful and the Damned by F. Scott Fitzgerald, which is a book I love. So the way that it's written is really entertaining for me because I'm a fan of that style of writing. And it's basically about this couple who live in New York, and basically the background stories of the two people, the husband and the wife, how they grew up, where they're from. They're basically part of this upper echelon of extremely rich and affluent New York people towards the end of the 18th century and kind of into the early 1920s. So that's very much up my alley. Then it goes to the second part of the book, which is another book. So there's books within this book, so to speak, and it's called My Life by Andrew Bevel. And that book is written from the perspective of a man who works on Wall Street, who's very rich. His parents have been part of the financial fabric of the United States since its inception, and he, does all this trading and talks about how he does his work, and he talks about his wife as well, who, as you're reading it, is very similar to the 2 characters that were in the first book. So personally, I was so confused. I'm like, why is this the same book but written by 2 separate people, and it has 2 separate things that it kind of focuses on? And I was very, very confused by that. Then you get to the third section, which is written A Memoir Remembered by Ida Portenza. So this woman is trying to get a job. It's the 1920s or 1930s. She goes for an interview, and it's for Andrew Bevel. And she's the ghostwriter of the book that you just read by Andrew Bevel. Does that make sense? And Andrew Bevel wants to write his own memoir because the original book by Harold Vanner is based off him and his wife, and he wants to correct the narrative. So in the first book, there's the couple, and then the woman ends up losing her mind and is in a mental institution, and she undergoes shock therapy and all these other things. And Bevel is basically upset that his wife is being portrayed in this way. So he hires a ghostwriter to write his own memoir so that he can tell people that's not what really happened. And then through her doing these interviews, eventually, unfortunately, Bevel passes away. So the book never gets finished. So there are portions towards the later half of this book where it's kind of modern day after Bevel has died, decades later, where his house gets turned into a museum, and she's going through some of the archival notes and ledgers and things of him and his wife, because she's trying to fill in some of the blanks that she never got, either because the interviews ended early or because he just wasn't honest and forthcoming. So she fills in all these dots, because even as she's interviewing him, it kind of seems like he doesn't know his wife, or he doesn't want to share certain things about his wife, and he wants his ghostwriter to portray her in a very specific way that doesn't necessarily make any sense. So she's kind of been haunted by this book for decades and decades, and now that the house has been turned into a museum, and now that all of their personal notes and ledgers and things are accessible, she wants to fill in those dots because it's just been bothering her for all these years, all of these questions that she's never had. So that being said, I enjoyed the book. I thought it was great. Again, if you are into sort of that older writing style that was sort of 1920s, 1930s, you're gonna enjoy this book. It's not very action-packed, I'll tell you that right now. It's a lot of just description and conversation. It's not a lot of action. There's one or two parts that are sort of more active, but it's definitely not a very thrilling, exciting, fast-paced read by any stretch of the imagination. But if you like some of older writings, the best comparison I can think of is F. Scott Fitzgerald or Amor Towles. If you like them, you would probably enjoy this. I think I gave it 5 stars, and I'm sticking with that for now. Again, had I known what was going on, I probably would have enjoyed it even more, but I spent a very large portion of the book being confused. But again, that's a me problem because I didn't look at the book jacket because I just don't like to. Okay, this next book is called Night Watch. This one is also a Pulitzer Prize winner. This book is interesting because most of the time when I find a book and I read it, I find it, screenshot it, kind of set it aside, and then kind of maybe buy it later on down the road. This was one that I kind of saw and instantly was like, you know what, I'm just gonna get it. I'm into it. I'm intrigued by it. It's an interesting time period in my opinion. I don't know much about it yet because I think I've only read like 10 pages so far, but it's basically post-Civil War during the Reconstruction era, which personally I find that time period very interesting, but I have not seen many, if any, books that sort of take place in that time period. I feel like you have stuff pre-Civil War, during Civil War, and then you have stuff kind of later on, more like 1920s, like World War I and II. I've read so many books that take place either during or in between or after World War I and World War II. I've even done books that are kind of more around Vietnam and the Korean War. But this one, again, it's Reconstruction, it's carpetbaggers, it's Jim Crow law, it's all this different stuff that is a very interesting time period in my opinion, but I haven't really seen many authors who write about that time period. So I'm excited to get into this and we'll see how it goes. So let me know your thoughts and opinions. If you have read either Trust or Night Watch, let me know your thoughts and opinions. Were you as confused as I was with the Trust, or were you somebody who did your due diligence and read the book jacket?